Okay, I think I am live. Sorry that took a second. My internet was being very pokey today for some reason. Let me just center this a little bit or center myself. I want to make sure I'm looking at the camera. I finally got like an actual webcam to do like Zoom meetings and not have it be like my grainy webcam, but it's weird because I'm looking at my computer, but then also the camera's up there. We're trying it. Hi, guys. Hi, Melanie. Hi, peculiar person. Thank you guys so much for joining. Welcome, pals, both new and old. Thank you so much for supporting Atypical, supporting me. And thank you so much for tuning in for this, our first of many live streams. It has been a minute since I've done one of these. YouTube has changed their entire interface. So we're going to fingers crossed that this all goes well. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm using an actual microphone as well so that you can hear me clearly, hopefully. But yes, anyway. All right, here we go. We are going to do some questions. I got some questions from you guys in advance. Thank you so much for that. But obviously feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll be, answering them as we go. This is the first time I've done a live stream in a long time after a long time of not really communicating with people. So this is going to be interesting. I've been doing some like live panels and stuff. A bunch of you joined the USC thing last week, which was so fun. And it was so great to have you there in the Zoom webinar chat, seeing you all. But doing those when you like have other people and you're having a conversation with people just sort of feel like Zoom meetings. But I used to do a lot more like presenting at panels and conventions and talking to classes and like going on book tour and all of those types of things and doing live streams more regularly, whether it was like Instagram Q&As or these types of things for our old Patreon. But yeah, it's been over a year of not socializing with anybody in person and not doing a lot of like solo events. So yeah, I apologize for whatever weird energy I might bring, but I'm advertising the vibes right here. All panic, no disco. I got this shirt for Christmas from my mom. Thanks, Mom. Yes, fake microphone. I was like uploading the old live streams onto the Atypical Pals website and just like, yeah, we were just using my like laptop microphone. And I realized like, oh, I'm a professional podcaster. I should probably actually like hook up an actual mic to my computer when I do these things. So, yes, thank you, Sarah Stork, for saying that I'm doing great and that a lot of us have forgotten how to be human. That's accurate. All right, enough with my gabbing, even though I guess that's all that this is technically. I'm going to pull up my questiones and get to it. So one of the additional questions that I got was a big thank you for making the spinoffs available for all. Thank you so much for listening to them when they were on Luminary and for being excited about them being released into the wild. I am so excited that we can have these shows in the world and I can like talk about them freely and share them freely. And it's very exciting. Also, if you put in a question through the Google form, I don't understand Google Forms yet. I'm going to, and forgot to like choose the setting to see who asks what questions. So I'm not actually going to be able to attribute any of these questions to the people who ask them. So I apologize for that. In the future, I'll make sure that it's not like automatically anonymous in case people want to, be shouted out. So apologies for that. Okay. Thanks, Lux Luminaire, for saying my shirt is an entire mood. I think so. This is pretty much my perpetual mood. Okay. So here, this is a good one to start off, I think. When you first had an idea to start a podcasting company, did you have doubts about moving from artistic writer, actor, musician jobs to something that is supposedly less creative and more paperworky, or was it a logical next step to you? First of all, it's a great question. Thank you to whoever asked it. Sorry that I can't see. So it's funny because it's a little bit of both. Like, I think that the thing that a lot of people don't necessarily realize about being a creative person and doing something like the Bright Sessions or, a web series or YouTube channel or being a Twitch streamer or any of those things is that it just inherently comes with a lot of paperwork. Like, I'm sure at some point you get to a level where like you're Shonda Rhimes and you have an empire of people to do the paperwork for you. But I have accountants now who like help me with my taxes, but basically everything else is still up to me. And that's, I think, true for like anybody who sort of is doing their own creative endeavor, whether it's, like publishing or making a podcast. So there's always a degree of the non-artistic part of my job that like I had to do. But I think that it was a natural progression in that sense. But like, I think the hardest thing about that, for me at least, about the transition from like being the person in charge of all of the administrative stuff for the Bright Sessions versus being the person in charge of people in charge of the administrative things for multiple shows, was that it's really, I think in my head I was like, I like collaborating, I like working with people, I like directing people. Like being a manager is like being a director, and it is to an extent, but there's such a different kind of day-to-day approach. Like I'm used to hopping into a studio with a group of actors for like 2 weeks max and kind of working with them, being the person in charge, directing everybody what to do, and then like bouncing off to my own little corner. And for the first 2 years of Atypical, I was really serving as a manager for anywhere from, 2 to 5 people, depending on the particular month or the particular project. And to give you guys a little bit of insight into like what's been happening with Atypical. So we started out at the end of 2018, sort of launched in 2019. It was just me, Brigham, and Jordan for a while, kind of making things work. And then our amazing production manager, Lillian Holman, came aboard, and Evan actually came aboard as like a full-time employee in 2020 for scoring and engineering purposes. And then, the pandemic hit, and making fiction podcasts is hard and expensive. And I really wanted to make In Strange Woods and Life with Leo and spend money actually making content versus sustaining a business. And so for all intents and purposes, Atypical is currently like functionally just me, and then sort of this like disparate set of creators who are all gathered around like the same campfire. And that's part of why I started Atypical Pals, is because the vision of Atypical kind of shifted from being something that like was a functional production company that was going to build a physical studio, which we almost did do, and then the pandemic hit and we hadn't signed the lease yet. And thank God, because obviously being a physical studio is like not a priority anymore, or even a necessity to make podcasts. I mean, I haven't been in a physical studio for over a year. So we went from sort of focusing on that and being like a production house that was going to like sell originals, but then sort of like sustain itself being a production house for other podcasts. And when that became impossible to do, and, we had been looking for funding for In Strange Woods Life with Leo for a little while, and nobody wanted to fund a show from me that didn't have my byline on it because people are still scared of funding fiction podcasts. At the end of last summer, I sort of had to, close up shop, basically, in terms of like having employees and having people on payroll because we just fully ran out of cash. And it was really hard. And like, the weird thing is that like the company still exists, right? Because like we're still releasing shows, and like Brigham and Jordan are still very much like a part of my life, and Lillian too. Like I'm constantly like wrecking her for other production management projects, and I might be hiring her on for a thing in a couple of months that I'm doing, but like another company is producing. And it's still very much like this collective of friends and people who wanted to make something, but it's sort of pivoted from being like a day-to-day company to being a vehicle, ideally, for people to get their original works out there. And like my dream for Atypical is to use it to fund my own stuff. Like I've got 2 projects, one of which you guys have heard about so many times if you follow me on Twitter, which is my Gay Cowboy project. And another show, a weekly show that I've been working on for 2.5 years. I had the idea when I was 10 years old, or like the concept. Obviously, I wasn't thinking about it as like a weekly fiction podcast, but I'm working on it for a really, really long time. Oh my gosh, Lillian, you're here. You're amazing. I'm so glad that you joined in right when I was complimenting you. That's so cute. So yeah, I've got these 2 original shows that like I really want to make and sort of have sustain like myself, and then ideally pour money back into Atypical's coffers with the intention of like not necessarily getting like the sort of day-to-day business side up and running again, but the intention of like the thing I really want to do is have Atypical serve as the producer for like my shows and my partnership shows, like things that I write for other places that might need like a production partner. So for me to like build my own teams. And that's the thing that I want to talk to you about, Lillian. It's a very secret project I've been working on for a little while. And I just need to get the budget approved, and then hopefully, you know, we can get the whole team back together and do it. But the thing that I really want Atypical to be in the future is for like my original shows, like obviously releasing the AM archives and the college tapes and putting ads on that and getting the Atypical Pals together, and then ideally pivoting into this weekly show that I'm hoping to release at the beginning of 2022, having that sustain the business so that I can still make my, you know, weird little gay cowboy shows and all of that, but then also set up like a grant program. Like that's ultimately like the goal, I think, of what Atypical wants to be from now. Because basically what I did with Within Strange Woods and Life with Leo and Lily's amazing show Greenhouse and Brigand's show, which I know he's talked about in the Discord, but I don't think he's said the name of. So I won't give too much away. But basically what I did for those was like provide budgets, you know, for In Strange Woods, obviously it's big budget. For, you know, Greenhouse and Brigand's show, like very, very small budgets because they're functionally very small shows for a reason. But then like providing, you know, budget, as much resource and sort of oversight as the creator wanted. And then just like being the vehicle through which to like then organize like ad sales and marketing and like have it be under the Atypical umbrella. But okay, good. He did already talk about it. Look Up. Yes. Okay. I thought he had. It's so great. I heard a little snippet of one of the later episodes today, and oh my gosh. So I would really love to have that be like the meat and potatoes of what I'm doing moving forward, like making 1 or 2 shows of my own a year, and then getting to like open up a month-long submission process where people send in their scripts and their series outlines for a show that they want to make in a podcast form. And I get to select the show that I like and that I want to hear and give that person a budget, have them own all of the IP, but, you know, we do a revenue split on the revenue that it makes, and then get to sort of guide them through the process as much or as little as they want, and kind of have them it'd be like a little like incubator, you know? So that's my dream. I feel like I'm not answering the original question, but that's kind of like the broad update of, oh, we totally do have a channel for Look Up, and I made it. I can't believe I forgot that. Okay, good. But yeah, that's a really long-winded answer to a question that was not really about that. The question was, did you have doubts about moving for artistic writer, musician jobs to something supposedly less creative and more paperworky? So, I mean, yeah, I did have doubts. And I think ultimately what I discovered is that like, I am not a person who necessarily wants to be running a business. Like the thing that I wanted to do was get to write my own stuff, but then also like provide a space for creators who are also like maybe edged out of like traditional media to make their thing and to make it exactly the way that they want it. So like all of the Atypical creators, you know, from Jordan with Arcs, which somebody has asked a question about, which I'll get to, you know, Lillian with Greenhouse, to Brigand with Look Up, to In Strange Woods, to Life with Leo, all of those creators own their IP 100% outright. If they adapt it into TV, if they, you know, do whatever, like they do that completely without me. Unless, you know, like they wanted me involved and I wanted to be involved and all that stuff. But like it is theirs to hold forever, because as somebody who has her own IP, that was something that was really important to me. But that's also like structurally and financially speaking, like not always the smartest move. So I think kind of figuring out the balance of those things was, you know, a real struggle in 2020. And I sort of ultimately deciding like, okay, maybe I'm not the person who can run a business. Maybe I'm not the person who's going to like have a production house, but I can sort of reset and refocus on building out my own IP again, because that's the thing that sort of like funded Atypical in the first place and was able to, you know, fund In Strange Woods and Life with Leo. And so it's like, I'm going to refocus on making money from my own ideas again, and then pouring that back in and sort of reimagining what an Atypical creator looks like. So yeah, I did have doubts, and I think that they were sort of borne out in the sense that like, I am not a business person. I'm a person who I think can think big picture, but doesn't function well with the day to day of like a 9 to 5, but like keeping in touch with people consistently throughout the day, just because I tend to sort of get into my own head. That was a really hard lesson to learn. And it was really tough to kind of have to wind the whole thing down to just be me again. But I think ultimately like it was a good call for everybody involved. And I think what's going to come out of it in the long run is going to be very positive. So wow, that was the longest witted answer to a question, and I barely even answered the question. So thank you for listening to that. Okay, so Lily, yeah, Lily knows a lot more about the Gay Cowboy show, and I am so excited about it. All right, you know what? I feel like I've been talking around it for so long. I'm just going to tell you guys what the name of it is. It's called Desperate Hollow, and I cannot wait to write it. Or to make it. I've written the first 2.5 episodes out of 10 or 12. I don't know. We'll see how long it is. And I'm obsessed with it. Okay, wait. I just want to quickly like copy and paste these questions in here. Oh my gosh, Robert, I'm so sorry. I just saw that you asked a question and that your break is now over and you have to leave. I will answer it, I swear, and you can come back and see the answer. Sorry for talking for so long about that one question. Okay, so moving forward, because I mentioned it, is someone asked, is there any chance of ARC's podcast returning soon? It's so good. Thank you. I think it's really good too. I really, really love playing that game. Yes, I would love to do ARCs. Like, I think that, we are all really eager to play again and to pick up where we left off. But it's been really tricky to schedule. Like, we haven't played in over a year, because Jordan went back to England in like last February, like over a year ago. And so like the time difference was so hard. And then with COVID and everything, like we've all been scattered to the winds so much, that it's just been really, really hard. And that's honestly like the information that I have about it. That was always a show that was like under the Atypical banner that was entirely Jordan's. So that would be a question for him. I know he's like really busy with Sad Boys and with streaming and all of that stuff on YouTube. I think it's always in the back of our minds, but it's just one of those things that because we're all focused on the things that like actually pay our rent, it has sort of fallen by the wayside a little bit. So I can't say that it will ever come back. I personally would love to have it come back, but ultimately it's up to Jordan. So he would have the deets on that. But thank you guys so much for listening to it and loving it, because I also really love it. Oh my God, Lily, you're going to make me cry. I miss you. Lily was the best collaborator. Oh my gosh. It was, yeah. And it did wind down for the best or the most necessary reasons, which is that, when you don't make any money, you can't keep things going. But I think, we will rise again in a new and stronger form. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions in here. Okay. This is another question that's for probably other creators, but was In Strange Woods always supposed to be a podcast, nothing else? Or did you still considering other media? So the creators, as far as I understand it, Brett, Matt, and Jeff always conceived of it as a podcast. We were just talking about this the other day to someone. I don't remember why. But yeah, it came to Atypical as a podcast. So, through like the weird magic of just like LA being a very small place to live, the trio, as we call them, had been working on this podcast for a while. They'd had written it, they'd produced this demo pilot, and they were trying to get funding for it. And like Brett knew my friend Hillary, and so she was like, my friend Lauren just like started a podcast company, you should, submit it to her. And this was like not at a point when Atypical was taking submissions. Atypical was like never really taken submissions for shows, just because we had so many things internally already. Like by the time we started Atypical, Life with Leo had already been pitched to me by Tavy, and I like I want to produce. If I had $1 million, I would like just produce all of like Tavy's amazing ideas. And then obviously like both Brayden and Jordan had their own ideas. I had my own ideas. We were kind of just going to like focus on the internal team and like our existing collaborators' ideas first. Megan and I have been working on a show forever that like we've gotten so close to selling a couple of times, but we really want it to be released publicly and not behind a paywall. And so it kind of like limited our options. But that was like something we were really focused on, and still very much is something that we both really want to do when we can like actually put time and money towards it. But so yeah, we weren't taking submissions, but Brett just like cold emailed the Atypical email with a link of the demo pilot. And this is at a point, this was before the wonderful Lily was in charge of like all of our email and really amazing about organizing it. And so like Jordan Brigham and I just sort of like all looked at the Atypical email, and kind of like fielded things. And Brigham listened to it first and was like, you have to listen to this. And I turned it on, and within the first 5 minutes, I was like, this is going to be so expensive to make, but I have to make it. So it always was a podcast by the time that it came to us. And we were talking about this. I was talking about this with the trio the other day, and I believe it was always a podcast for them too. It kind of came from listening to shows like Serial and S-Town and the sort of fiction feeling that comes from like the narrativization of those types of stories, and thinking about, musical theater and how that form has had to morph through the years, and cast albums and things like that. And they just started talking about what this story could be, and could you do a musical that's about, sort of a true crime podcast. And as for it existing in other forms, I mean, like, who knows? I think we're all hopeful that it will have a life beyond the podcast, because we all love the piece so much. But yeah, I mean, you guys know that I've been in Bright Sessions TV development for like what feels like my whole life, and it's still going, and it's going well. But just like those things take forever, and they're thorny as shit. And like I said, like it's their IP, so like they get to go off and do whatever they want, and I'm here to like cheer them on and be involved when I can be helpful. But yeah, fingers crossed. I'm hopeful about it taking on some other forms, but we shall see. So that is that. Does Brett know we're very sorry for seemingly yelling at him for the first shows of Strange Woods? He loves it. It's so funny when that first started happening, like on our group text, like they started to send tweets and stuff, and Brigham and I were like, no, this is good. Like this, like, let us introduce you to fandom speak online, because they're not necessarily like folks who are deeply entrenched in that world. So it was very, very fun. And Strange Woods was an earworm machine. It really, really was. It's just, I've been listening to it for now like 2 years, and Come and Find Me just is still constantly in my head. Okay, and here's another question on Strange Woods. I'm just gonna grab some water real quick. Got my AM Archives glass that we got for our rap party back when we could go and do things like have rap parties in bars. Okay, so someone asks, I lived in Strange Woods. Thank you. What was the process of producing that like? Ha 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 ha. Lily should really be like doing this live with me. We should figure out a way to do that, because Lily did like so much of the brunt of the production work of In Strange Woods. And I got to sort of like step back and just be like Daddy Warbucks, just like, writing the checks and sending people off to do things. It was Lily. Yeah, it was really tough. I mean, like, I think it would have been tough regardless. The fact that we were funding it, and so like every dollar count, and the fact that we produced it during the midst of like the worst of the pandemic on 2 coasts, or actually it wasn't the worst. It wasn't the worst part of the pandemic. It was the summer. So things had eased up a little bit. In the summer, when SAG and no one call for how to do things in a COVID world, really hard and expensive. But it was also like just incredibly rewarding. Like I didn't sit in on most of the recording sessions because Evan was doing all the engineering, and then Jeff was directing, and Brett was in there, and Matt was in there. So like all of them were in the Zooms directing people. We sent folks laptops and microphones so that Evan could literally like walk them through setting it up and then control the computer that we had sent them. So we didn't have to like hack into like these, to like Donald and Chambliss computer. And then like I was, sort of in charge of like dealing with, like talent side of things and trying to lock some of those folks down, and budgeting and staffing and contracts, and like with Lily doing all of that stuff. And then I was also in charge of the first edit. So like I edited together, not the songs, but like the dialogue. And then Jeff did a pass and sort of did his like director's cut. And it was really rewarding to get to, having read these scripts and heard some of the music and the demos and all of that, like get to sit down and get the raw audio from like Patrick Page, Donald Champlin, and Jonah Platt, and like all these incredible people. And knowing that they all recorded completely in isolation. Like the only two people who were recorded simultaneously um, were Irene and Declan. Oh my gosh, I forgot their names for a second. And that they, recorded simultaneously so that we could get like the back and forth and them sort of like improvising and stuff. And there's so much improvisational stuff. And I still need to look to see if I pulled out stuff for the blooper reel, because I feel like maybe I did, but it'd be on one of my hard drives. So that was really, really rewarding to get to like hear all of these takes from isolation and have them be so good, because Jeff's such a great director and all the performances are so good and the scripts are so good, and get to put it together into this thing. And like there were parts of just editing the dialogue that made me cry because the performances were so good. And I'd never really jumped into a part of the process at that point. Basically everything I've made, I've either gone from like writing through directing and being in all the recording sessions and then jumping out. Like with Passenger List, I'm not really involved with the post-production stuff because that's when John kind of takes it over. And I've been I've done for like Marvels, I like wrote the scripts and like wasn't involved at all really from there. And it was really weird to like jump in. I didn't write the scripts, I didn't sit on the sessions, and then I jumped in on the post-production side. And that was really strange, but really, really fun. And yeah, I just super challenging, but super rewarding. How many hard drives do I have? How many hard drives do I have? I have 4 2-terabyte drives. They're all 2 terabytes. And I think only one of them has space left on it. Because I did a YouTube channel for years. Those files were huge, and then like just all of my audio is backed up. And then I have one hard drive that like got corrupted or something that I cannot open, that has all my old photos from college, and I need to figure it out. I don't think that there's anything it would all be like pre-2015, so there'd be nothing Bright Sessions related on there. But yeah. Is there any possibility of Tama or TCT bloopers being released? Tama definitely exists, I want to say. I'm almost positive. Can anybody confirm if they've heard a Tama blooper reel before? Because I feel like I edited one together, but I don't know. And then, okay, yes, wait, I think Lily, you did. Yes, you did, because I sent you a bunch of like disparate files that I pulled out that were all labeled insanely, I'm pretty sure, and you like turned it into an actual thing. I think that happened. TCT, I also want to say that exists. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah. But Lily, you did edit a blooper reel. Maybe it was the season 4 Bright Sessions blooper. But yes, Mao-san screaming and everybody freaking out and laughing, and Christian almost dropping his iPad and catching it. Oh, I miss them so much. I'll look. I think that there might be somewhere. And yeah, season 4 of TBS definitely has a blooper reel. And then I had an intern one summer who put together the color-coded timeline, took my terrible timeline and actually like made it real. Ari, and she cut together a blooper reel. So that must have been season 3. I'm pretty sure there's a Tama blooper reel somewhere. I will go digging for that because I feel like it exists. TCT, there might be a couple of bloopers, but the weird thing about TCT is that was recorded in remote production. So even though we did things simultaneously, like you can't always hear like the thing that's they're sort of like half blooper reels. And also because like there's not as much like energy when you're not in studio. It was like the first time any of us had done a remote production. So like, it took us a while to sort of get into the groove. There just weren't as many like bloopery moments. So yeah, I think maybe I pulled a couple, but like there were not many for College Tapes, unfortunately, just because like things were kind of just weird recording over Zoom. Yes, potato. I'm very happy that I was able to find it. It was really weird going searching for that the other day, because like to the point of like recording remotely, it's been a really long time since I've edited something that was recorded in studio, and it was so weird to like hear everybody in the same room and like all of us recording on a single mic. and it made me very sad and nostalgic. So we'll get back there and do more blooper reels eventually. But yeah, I'll look into the Tama and TCT stuff. I'll see what I can do. Okay, so going to two of the questions that were in the chat before. Wait, did I miss? I feel like I missed one. I've been copying them over as much as I can. Okay, well, if I don't answer your question, please copy and paste it. Okay. Someone asked, regarding Luminary, did something happen there, or is it just that Atypical Artist is stable enough financially to publish independently now? So I feel like you got the answer to the is Atypical Artist financially stable enough question, which no, it's not. But thank you guys so much for contributing to that not being the case anymore. I really, really appreciate it. It's a huge, huge help. But so the deal with Luminary is that, oh God, it was 3 weeks ago that I found that blooper. No, you're lying to me. Please tell me you're lying. Oh God, I want to die. Okay. So I was saying words. Yes. So Luminary, the deal with them was that my initial contract with them was to the licensing of 3 Bright Sessions, additional Bright Session seasons. And so and it was 3 just because like that's what they wanted. But like I had basically talked to them being like, all right, I have this idea for the AM archives, and then I want to do this thing in 2020 in real time. And then I didn't really like have an idea for a third series. Well, maybe I'll tell you guys what it ended up sort of being the idea. We'll see. And we got to, we did Tama and they were super happy with it. The numbers weren't like amazing and they weren't what we needed to like immediately trigger us into a season 2 that would automatically like give us a season 2. And we didn't hit that. But Luminary took the option anyway, because they just liked working with us. They liked the show. They believed in it. And so we were able to do the college tapes, which is huge. And then after the college tapes, like they have a, window to either like re-up their option or for us to hit that sort of tipping point. And college tapes did a little bit better. We picked up a little bit more listeners, but still did not push us over that edge. And then Luminary Ultimate was like, we love you guys. We love these shows, but like financially we can't do this because, and this is like the grand irony of Luminary is that like we made those shows and unfortunately they were not available to everybody and that they cost money to listen to, but also it's like the first time I've been able to get paid for my writing in a show that I made, and B, get to actually like pay everybody well. And it was like, and like, not even just like, pay people like scale. Like, no, like everybody who made the shows got like paid what they should be paid as professionals because Luminary gave us a very generous budget. And so I completely understood them not wanting to necessarily like shell out that much money again for like a show that wasn't going to like, bolster their platform in the way that they hoped it would. And like, it's not like we had started talking about story plans. Like I hadn't even pitched them on like what the 3rd season would be. And so, yeah, ultimately they didn't re-up their option. And because they didn't do that, they released us from the contract, basically like because it wasn't re-upped 3 months after the last episode airs was when we could like, when everything reverts back to us. So it's just a matter of the contract. And that was just something I had negotiated up front of like, if I make these, I don't, and Luminary crashes or like, we don't do more or whatever, I don't want them to live in a vault forever unlistened to. So yeah, that was just like, that was just the term of the deal. And like, I now that I've been through several other deals and deal processes with other companies around making fiction podcasts, like Luminary was truly like a Cinderella type of situation, or unicorn type of situation where we got great budgets, full creative freedom, and everything belongs to me at the end of the day. And like, I am unbelievably grateful to them and for that. And I also know that I'll probably never have that again. So thank you guys so much for listening if you were able to, and for being enthusiastic about the show now that we're releasing it widely, because yeah, I really feel like I kind of got the best of all of the worlds at the end of the day. So it turned out turned out well. And you know, I think I would have been able to put together some sort of like third season idea, because there's always more story to be mined in the Bright Sessions. But I'm kind of glad that it ended where it did, because even when I was making the original Bright Sessions, like the College Shapes was the last thing that I'd sort of conceived of in the timeline. Obviously, we still have some faraway place, but that takes place in 2017. And yeah, I'm really happy with the way that it ended. And so I wouldn't necessarily want to continue the story beyond that, unless like, you know, I had to. So yeah, it all worked out. I found it March 4th. Oh my God. Also, you're drawing my birthday gift right now. I'm so excited. God, what is time? Okay, so yeah, this idea, I'll tell you guys this idea. So it was like it was a half-baked idea. It had no title yet, because you guys know that I am the worst at titles. The university tapes, terrible. My phone keeps squeaking on this chair. So the idea was a blend of a couple of things. So I had like too much fun bringing a version of Marley into the college tapes, and then like kind of teasing Inda. This is going to be a little spoiler zone for both A Neon Darkness and the college tapes. So if you have not caught up on those things, like mute me for the next 2 minutes and then come back, or like fast forward if you're watching this later. So yeah, I had a really, really fun time bringing him into the mix and like teasing it into at the end. And also like really fell in love with this idea that like Caleb loved being like an orientation advisor and like spending time at this like summer camp, and sort of like it being like, you know, wilderness Caleb that he and Frankie talk about. And so I was like, okay, so what if what if Inda and Neon, after like everything that happens in A Neon Darkness happens, like Marley eventually goes to the East Coast to go to law school, and they like, you know, I think Inda and Neon like kind of like drift apart for a little bit and then come back together and like ultimately end up together. And I was like, what if they, especially with like Inda's sensing of atypicals, like what if they started like a summer camp for atypical teens who, you know, need like a place to be, and like they had therapy as part of it. And it was like, yeah, it was just like this summer camp for like atypical kids in crisis. And so that was the idea of what the third season was going to be. It was going to be like Inda and Neon running this as like a, you know, like older married couple running this summer camp in Maine for atypical teens, and like Caleb goes and like works for them. So yeah, I'm so glad that you guys like this idea. Please fic it, please. And like, you know, never say never, like maybe someday I'll dust that off. Because also like Inda and Neon are characters that like I love so deeply with my entire heart. But it wasn't one of those things where I was like, I have to, like, this has to be told in order to like complete the narrative of the Bright Sessions, especially because that would have been a Bright Session series that didn't have Joan in it. And that just felt like bad. Like it just felt weird and wrong. So like maybe someday I'll like reapproach that, but I think I'm glad to have like left the Bright Sessions canon sort of where it is. Okay, so we are now out of spoiler zone. This is my little symbol for spoiler zone, I guess. And it was exactly 2 minutes. Amazing. Okay. Okay. PJ asked a question. Thanks, PJ. What are your tips and advice for producing and directing audio dramas in a post-COVID and current COVID world? Great question. So great question that like I don't have a good answer for. I mean, I think my biggest piece of advice is like, I think from a practical standpoint, like the thing that I've been really focused on is hiring actors who can engineer themselves, and who have their own equipment and are very comfortable using that equipment to record and then send audio files. I know that sounds kind of baseline, but like we discovered pretty quickly that it's really not, like that there are plenty of people who have mics, but like they wouldn't necessarily know how to record something and like send it to you labeled. And I don't love that that's like my approach to casting now, or that's sort of a prerequisite, because obviously it like cuts out a lot of people who don't necessarily have the financial capability or the like physical capability to buy equipment or set up a space in their home, or have a laptop where they can engineer themselves. But I think for indie producers, like I said, we got equipment and sent it to all of the In Strange Woods folks, and it just like cost thousands of dollars. Like it's one of those things that like I'm really glad that we spent the money on it that we did, because the end result sounded amazing. And for that show particularly, like we needed the talent that we needed, and we needed them to sound that good. But like, yeah, the budget for equipment and for that was like comparable to like my entire talent budget for Maxine Miles. So, it's like if I get another show that's like really well funded, like I will absolutely send folks equipment and just cast people I want to cast. But yeah, until we can get back in studio, like I kind of do have to cast people who already know what they're doing to an extent. The thing that like I always am willing to shell out money for is like Ethernet cables and adapters of Ethernet cables into computers. Like we got one of those for Andrew Nowak for college tapes, because like he had his own stuff and everything, but and he had this like he set up this little like closet in his closet to record in, and it worked great. But because he was in his closet, the internet connection was just crap. And so I got him like a 40-foot Ethernet cable that he could route through his apartment into his closet, because like the hardest thing from like a creative perspective about producing through Zoom is like the lag and trying to find a rhythm with people. And so if someone's internet connection cuts out or is unstable, like that's something that that can really kill the mood. And then in terms of directing, I mean, like, it's funny. My directing approach really wasn't that different ultimately. Like once we got into the groove and people kind of knew what they were doing and got used to the like order of things, my directing approach was basically the same. I would say like the biggest thing is like try to take off as much burden as you possibly can from your actors. So like they obviously still have to do things on their end, but just like sending them script packets that are really, really clear, making the schedule really straightforward, giving them time in between takes to stop and label and do all of that kind of stuff, and always reminding them of the labeling. Like that was something that Lily was such a huge help with, and like the Zoom chat, like putting the scene number and the episodes that people knew what to label, like all of those little details that are going to make your life much easier on the back end that like you need the actors to do up front. Just trying to take off as much of the burden from them as you possibly can, I think is something that also helps. Oh yes, and pop filters. Don't forget pop filters. We also spent so much money on pop filters because also they're not something that can be sanitized and shared. Like the mic kits, we would, sanitize and then let sit and then send somebody else. But pop filters, because they're like, they're fabric and you're literally like breathing onto them. We just like had to buy 20 pop filters, but they're like $7 on Amazon. So that's something too, that like always make sure your talent has a pop filter, but they're not something you can reuse in pandemic times. So yeah. I think the most interesting thing about doing all this remote production is wondering if I am going to go back to being fully in studio all the time after COVID, just because like, obviously I miss being in studio so much, but there's an efficiency to the Zoom recording. And I think the biggest thing about it is that I've gotten now to work with actors in New York, in North Carolina, in Chicago, in wherever, like Florida. And so, you're able to sort of widen the net and widen the like make the tent bigger in a really nice way, where like it sort of opens up. Like you don't have to be in New York or LA to do these things. So I think that that's like a really great benefit of it that I really do enjoy. I mean, my like greatest dream would just to cast people I want to cast regardless of where they are, and then just fly them to a place. But like, that's obviously very expensive. But yeah, I'll be interested to see, like, especially for like the weekly show, like that's something I want to do in studio, but for like the guest stars, will it make sense to like, because also will actors have moved out of LA? I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting to see like what happens. Yeah. Oh yeah, Canada. We did have a lot of talent in Canada. Christian is Canadian, and he was in Canada for like large parts of College Tapes and In Strange Woods. Okay, here's another question from the chat. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We've got about 15 minutes left, so please. Okay. This is kind of a two-part question. How do you get used to the sound of your own voice in audio recordings? And how do you get used to sharing your creative works with others? Oh my gosh, what a great question. This was someone in the chat. I didn't copy over the name because I'm stupid, but thank you so much for asking this question. I love it. Oh, it was Melanie. Okay, great. So yes, this is hard. I think the biggest thing about getting used to your own voice is just like, it's just exposure. That's all that it is for me. Like I just edited my voice so much that I just stopped thinking about it. Yeah, that's kind of like a lame answer because it's just like you just have to put in the hours, really. But eventually you will become numb to it. It's a weird thing. And I think like the weirdest thing is like, even as I'm thinking about listening to my voice and hearing myself talk and like getting stuck in my own head about like the things that I say and how I say them and the way that I'm talking. And like, yeah, you can get in a weird brain trap about it. You will notice the verbal tics that you have. Even if you're reading a script, like there are certain things. I was joking about this in Discord today where it's like because we were talking about, like a podfic that somebody was recording and like tripping over a line and even though they'd already read the fic before, obviously. And so I was like, yeah, I do that all the time where I would like write lines for myself that I know I'm not going to be able to say clearly, but I do it anyway. And then you get to the other side of it and you instantly regret writing that line. And I know those things because in editing myself, even editing myself reading scripts and not just talking naturally, there are certain words that I pronounce weirdly. There are certain like turns of phrase that I can't say, certain like consonant combinations that are hard for me. I think everybody has those things. And so, yeah, I think you're going to notice that stuff and it's going to be awful and you just have to power through. And it really just is about getting enough exposure to your own voice to become numb to it. It's dark advice, but there it is. And the second question, how do you get used to sharing your creative work with others? You don't. No, I'm kidding. Sort of. I think the biggest thing is sharing it with people you trust first. The first person that I shared the pilot of the Bright Sessions of the pilot of the Bright Sessions with, getting my own head about the way I talk again. Yeah, the first person I shared the Bright Sessions with was back in 2014. It was the pilot script. Was my friend Jack Delaney, who made the Natural 20 D&D web series that I was in. That is delightful. And he was someone who I'd spent a lot of time reading his scripts. We'd spent time working together as like collaborators. And he was always like really encouraging of me and of like my creativity. And he also is a writer and like a brilliant writer. And so that was something where I felt really comfortable sending him the script because I knew that like he would have smart ideas on it, but also would be gentle about it. And the same thing was true with my sister, Betsy, who was our psychological consultant for the whole run of the series, where she would like read and sort of give therapy perspective because she is a psychologist, or she has a degree in psychology. She doesn't do therapy anymore, but she has, the expertise. And that made it really a lot less scary. Like the fact that I was, rather than trying to like jump into a writer's group in LA or like bring it to class to like read as a scene or send it to, an actor who might be coming into the role, like it was a lot easier to send it to someone that I trusted. But that said, like, I think I also still was terrified after the fact because Jack gave me great notes that were exactly what I expected, where they were like smart and very kind and like gentle and like exactly what you want notes to be, especially when you're a burgeoning writer. And that was 2014. And like, I didn't make the Bright Sessions until late 2015. And it was because like, I got those notes back and I was like, oh yeah, this is good feedback, and I actually feel good about this feedback, but like, this is horrible. Like sharing this with another human was a bad idea. And I can't write more because I'm not a writer. And so I just sat on it for a year. And I was also talking about this in Discord today, which is that like we were talking about AO3 accounts, and like I just started a new AO3 account 2 days ago, basically, because I wanted to publish some fic that I wrote in 2018 that I was like too scared to share even anonymously. And that's for, even though it's for a fandom that nobody's in, for a ship that nobody in the fandom is into. But I was like just so nervous about having it exist somewhere and having somebody read it and like put two and two together that I wrote it. And finally, like the other, in sort of talking to all of you about fanfic, and also like this year, I've been trying to write a fanfic every month. I made it in 1 month, and then February disappeared from underneath my feet, and I didn't get anything done. But I'm writing a fic for March, so that's something. And like that exercise, which is a writing exercise, to like get me to like love aspects of writing again. And I didn't intend to publish any of the fics that I wrote this year, but like getting back into that world and talking to people openly about it, I was like, you know what? I think these fics are fine. And like, what if somebody has been watching the show in quarantine and like has feelings about this ship and discovers like me that there's no fic for them? You know, it's like, maybe I can give them some fic. And but like I started a new AO3 account for it because I was like, I want this to exist so separate from me. And I also like that this was after sharing it with Megan like 2 years ago when I wrote it, and, you know, and just having her be enthusiastic about it, even though she's not in that fandom. So I think like it's little baby steps at all the time. And I think that like the first step is always just like doing the thing, right? Like, I think even before you get to sharing your stuff, you have to make this stuff. And sometimes that can be a battle in of itself. So like, don't discount like that part of the victory. Like, if you wrote it and you're the only one who is reading it or looking at it or whatever it is, that is huge. And like, you know, that is a victory in of itself. And then, yeah, I think the first step is like share it with people who you trust. I think that there's like an impulse, and this is where I sort of sat with like not being sure if I wanted to publish my fic for a long time, which is that like, oh, if I share it anonymously, then like it'll be fine because it's not about me. But I still think that sharing stuff anonymously can be like really scary because people on the internet are still kind of mean sometimes. And like, they'll be mean about you to your stuff like unprompted. And I think that can be a real killer. And so sharing it with people that you trust, who like, you know who they are and they know who you are, whether it's like a Tumblr friend or a Discord friend or a friend in real life or your, you know, brother, sister, sibling, whatever. That can be a great first step to make it like less scary. That being said, depending on the thing, sometimes sharing it with somebody that you know is like even more terrifying. Like, I was so excited to have the world read A Neon Darkness, but like I did not want anybody I knew reading A Neon Darkness, because like it felt like sharing a piece of myself that like I kept hidden away. And the idea that people in my life who know me would like read it and be like, what's going on with you, was very, very scary. And I think that the same is true for Some Faraway Place, which is like another piece of my heart that is vulnerable and scary. So I think that it depends on the thing that you're sharing, but like that's where internet friends can be great, you know, because it's like maybe they know you from your fandom enthusiasm, your shared fandom, but like they might not know like everything about your life. And so sometimes it can be easier to share like those really intimate writing things with those people. I hope that answers your question, or at least gives some commiseration, I guess, for like how scary it is to share things. Oh my gosh, you guys got a fic writer for the camp fic. Yay! Oh my god, I can't wait to read it. It's so exciting. Okay. Okay, Marcus asks, okay, so since I'm drawing right now, here's a question. Do you ever just completely forget how to do something that should absolutely be second nature to you at this point? Because stuff like that happens to me all the time when I'm drawing, and I'm wondering if anything like that ever happens to you with a podcast production. Literally all the time. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think doing this, like doing like a live stream and like answering questions in a slightly coherent way outside of a conversation, I'm very much struggling right now. I don't know if anything that I'm saying is interesting or cogent. But yeah, I mean, like every time every time I like go to upload an episode of a podcast, and like I've changed hosting services a bunch of times, but like there are still things where I'm like, wait, how does this work? How do I do this? Or like, yeah, like just certain trying to schedule, like trying to, I mean, like casting is something every time that I feel like I'm reinventing the wheel. I mean, yeah, so many things. It's so funny actually. Writing can be that too. Like I turned in my last draft of Some Faraway Place in December, it was like right before the holidays. And I should be getting copy edits on that soon. The manuscript has been accepted, which I'm very excited about, which I think you guys know because I said that I got to keep it long, which I did. But like, you know, it's been 2 months since I've written 2 or 3 months since I've written prose, like really written prose. The fic I wrote in January was just like little like inner monologue drabbles for The Expanse. And I sat down to write this Bucky Goes to Therapy with Dr. Bright fic. And like, I've written in prose therapy scenes with Dr. Bright. Like, that's not something that's like old hat to me. But like, I was sitting there being like, how do you present tense? Is this past tense? Like, how do I do this? Because I spent the past month like deeply entrenched in writing scripts for this project that I can't tell you guys about yet. And also writing Maxine Miles scripts around that. And like, so I haven't really been in the Bright Sessions world and I haven't been in the prose world. That like, even though it's freaking, you know, Dr. Bright giving therapy to Bucky Barnes, another character that I know very well, I was just like, I don't know how to do this. So yeah, I really, really, really understand that. Okay, we've got, you know, now a couple more minutes, I think. Okay. I'm trying to think of like what questions I should save for next time. I think someone asked, can you tease anything about Life Leo or any behind the scenes stories? I do have some behind the scenes stories, but I kind of want to like wait maybe for next month to talk about Life with Leo, just to like, because once you have context for like the characters and who everybody is, like there's some really fun stuff about that show. And I think it's gonna be more fun if there's a little bit more context for it. So I might save that one for later. Yes, Lily knows. I will give you a little bit of a tease. So there's a scene in episode 8, I want to say 7 or 8, in which 2 of the characters get drunk and sing loudly in a bar. And I was not there for recording because I had some other production. Like we were doing a lot of the production on the weekends, but that was one of the weekday recordings, and I didn't direct Leo, and so Shanae and Lily just ran that session. And listening to like the dailies, the takes afterwards was so funny because these 2 actors just had the most fun with it. Yeah, it's the hardest. Lily's laughed during recording. It's really, really fun. And then there's a couple of moments in okay, you guys actually do have context for who this person is. So Philip Jordan, who plays Frank in the Bright Sessions, which is like the most serious role in that entire show, is like, I knew this because like I've known Philip for like 6 years, right? Like I cast him for a reason. And that's like, he's got incredible depth. He's an amazing actor to work with. He's a really fun guy. And I knew that he had like the depth that I needed for Frank, and like the ability to be both confident but vulnerable. But like the other thing about Philip that I didn't get to sort of play to this particular strength in the Bright Sessions is that he's like very, very funny. And he's like very, like as a person, he's like very exuberant, like very, like he's got this big laugh. He's like always cracking jokes. And yeah, it's just a really good natured person. And so we just like let him loose in Leo on some things. And it's, so, oh yeah, you guys have watched the Q&A. Yeah, you know how much he's a goofball. And yeah, there's this one line that he improvised that just like, it made me laugh during recording. It made me laugh during editing. And I was listening to the first pass sound design the other day, and it made me laugh then. Lily knows what I'm talking about because we were emailing about it. And yeah, I just like cannot wait for you guys to hear that. I said I wasn't going to answer that question, then I answered it. All right. Okay, I think I'm going to save the rest of these questions for later. So that we can get to them at a later Q&A. But thank you guys so much for joining and for being pals and for supporting me and Atypical as we like go on this new chapter of our journey and like try to make audio fiction viable and as creatively, free as it has been. Yes, the weed powers joke is very good. The power to make everybody happy. Yeah, that Q&A is still up on the Bright Sessions page if anybody hasn't seen it. It is really chaotic, but fun, and we're all somehow wearing blue and look like a Gap ad. It was very cute. So yes, thank you so much for joining and for supporting and for hanging out with me in Discord. If you're not already in the Discord, definitely be sure to hop in there and be chaotic with us and talk about how many feelings we have about Bucky Barnes, which is the only thing I'm going to be talking about for the next 5 weeks. I'm make no apologies. And I will see you guys at the next one sometime in April. But certainly between then, I will be seeing you on Discord. So thank you, pals, for joining. And as always, stay strange.